wait is over.
Ladies and gentlemen, from the studios in the wrestling capital of the South, it's another terrific episode of The BENGEBUSTER Show. Please welcome your host, Tony Binge.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to The BENGEBUSTER Show, coming to you right here in the Queen City of Charlotte. And it is March, and like we've been talking about for the last few weeks, March is going to be all about terrific Tony. I'm bringing on some great friends and someone that probably knows my wrestling career better than me, and I'm going to bring him on right now. I'm talking about Mr. Jeff Patton. Jeff, what is going on?
Oh man, love the music. Brings back some memories. Not much, man. Not much.
Man, it's good to have you back, Jeff. It's been a while since we had you on the podcast. I know you were helping us co-host it there for a while, and due to scheduling and everything, you wasn't able to record with us. But man, you were back, and now Chris is gone. Now Chris isn't gone forever, guys. He is on he is on an assignment this week. He's taking care of something, so he won't be here this week, but it's going to be Jeff and I, and the podcast for the month of March is going to be a little different. So if any of my listeners out there don't really care about me, don't really like me, you probably don't want to listen to the podcast this month, because every week is going to be about my wrestling career. And I thought, over the years of me wrestling, I used to record every single match that I had. And then as the years went by, I got tired of bringing the camera and trying to find a place to plug up and everything. So I kind of stopped recording my matches, probably somewhere around 1999 to 2000. And then after that, if there's a match, if I've had a match, somebody else has recorded it. It hasn't been me. So, but I want to tonight or on today's podcast, I brought back Jeff. As everyone knows, if you listen to some of my previous podcasts, this is the guy that kind of got me my start in wrestling. I actually, he didn't have a chance. He didn't have a choice, because I kept coming up there anyway. But Jeff, let's as we get started in tonight's show, let's talk about the first time you and I met. What do you recall, or what do you remember about that?
I remember you had came up to the show, and you were watching the wrestling show, and I'm trying to think exactly what day that was. I think it was September the 5th. We had a wrestling event, the Advance Club in the town of Glen Alpine, North Carolina, and one of your relatives had wrestled for us, and he had invited you to come up and watch the show. And after the show, you came up and started talking to me. You wanted to know who the man was in charge, and they sent you to me. And you talked about how much you loved wrestling and always wanted to be a pro wrestler, and wanted to know how you could get in the business. And I told you our next show when it was, and told you to come up and help set up the ring, and you could start training. And so that's how I met the first time.
Yeah. What was so funny was, back in 93, I was fresh out of high school, and hadn't quite went through my breakup yet with my high school girlfriend, but it was close. She was about as tired of me as I was her, but it was kind of like it's like all the planets kind of got together, because we, like you said, it was she and I, and then one of her friends and her boyfriend. We all made a trip. Well, the backstory is my uncle had kind of started training and wrestling with you. And he called me up and said, "Hey, I'm going to be a wrestler." And I'm like, seriously, there's no way. Because at this time, I didn't understand that there was, independence back then. Because I had watched wrestling from like 83 to like 92. And around 92, WCW, was starting to fade. I mean, they really wasn't doing well in 92. And I was still in high school in 92, and WCW had came to the Greensboro Coliseum. And in 92, when I went to see them that night, that was the first time that I had seen a live wrestling show since 1988 at the Greensboro Coliseum, when Crockett was still, they wasn't as hot as they were in 96 when I was going like every weekend, but they still drew pretty well. And I remember that night going, Jeff, and at the time, WCW, they had, Ron Simmons and Sting and Vader and Ravish and Rick Rude, and those kind of guys were like their top talent, because Flair had went to the WWF at that time. And I remember that was the first time, Jeff, that I ever met a pro wrestler in real life. We left. Well, when we first got to the show, I looked over at my seat, and the Coliseum, it wasn't sold out by any means. I think there might have been 1,500 people there, if I remember reading the dirt sheets on that. But anyway, I'm sitting in my seat, and I look over at the little tunnel where all the heels and the baby faces would come out of, and I look over, and there's Johnny B. Bad, and I'm like, that's Johnny B. Bad. So I walk over, had my ticket stub, and he signed it. And that night I told him, I said, man, what do you got to do to be a wrestler? And he told me, there's a lot of hard work involved, kid. And he's like, you just got right place, right time. And I said, okay. So he signed my autograph, and I left, and I thought, okay, wow, that's cool. I just met a wrestler, right? The show's over. We stop at the gas station that was like a mile from the Coliseum. And as I'm pumping gas in my ex-girlfriend's car, I look over, and I see this dude rolling in with a funky haircut and a little like at the time it was like, I think Chevrolet had a car called the Lumina maybe. Anyway, I look over, and it's Harley Race and Vader, and I'm really freaking out now, because I'm like, oh my God, this is Vader, and I'm thinking, well, and of course at this time I wasn't smart to the business. I'm like, well, he's a bad guy. He's not going to talk to me. So I walk over. Harley Race is pumping the gas in the car. And so I walk over, and when Harley sees me coming, he kayfays me. He gets in the car and shuts the door. And I'm like, okay. So I walk into the gas station, and Jeff, you can love this story. So Vader's in there with like 2 suitcases of natural light beer in his hand. He puts those 2 suitcases up on the counter, goes back and gets 2 more, and there's these 2 ring rats in there. They got the little mini skirts, and they're not very attractive, but you could tell that they're there with Vader. And he's talking to him about going to the hotel, and all of a sudden he realizes, I guess by the look on my face, that I'm a mark, and I want to talk to him. And I said, "Hey, Mr. Vader, how are you?" And as I'm asking him the question, the girls are like, Holiday Inn. He goes, ha, 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 and tells them shut up, right? And he looks over at me, and he says, "Hey, kid," he said, "you see all this beer?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "You see these women?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Stay away from both of them. They'll ruin your life." and I said, "Well, can I get your autograph?" He said, let me pay for this. Meet me at the, he goes, meet me outside. I'm in the burgundy car. I said, "Yeah, I saw Harley out there pumping gas." He says, "Don't talk to Harley." So I said, okay. So I walk outside the gas station. He comes out. He puts the beer in the car. He signs a little piece of paper I had. So at that night, I'm like, man, I met 2 pro wrestlers, and they both gave me some advice. Even though Vader was being funny, actually, Jeff, he wasn't. He gave me good advice, but too bad I never listened to him. That's why I got divorced so many times. But anyway, that's another story for another podcast. But that was like my first introduction to like meeting a real wrestler. But like I said, I had no idea that because in my mind, there were only 2 wrestling organizations at that time. It was WCW and WWF. And I didn't understand, or I didn't even know there was independence. So when my uncle told me that he was wrestling, I was like, well, you got to tell me where. I'm going to come watch you. And I drove all the way to Morganton to watch my uncle wrestle. He had wrestled for you the week or 2 weeks prior to that show. And then I come there to watch my uncle wrestle, and I'm like, if he can do it, I'm going to be able to do it. And for whatever reason, I don't think you had him booked on that show, but he was there. And I remember we all sat on the front row. I made sure we had front row seats, me and my friends. And I'm watching it, and I'm like, man, I want to do this. I want, and I was so keyed up. And my girlfriend at the time was like, these guys are way bigger than you. They'll kill you. I'm like, I don't care. I want to do this. And when I came and talked to you, I'm sorry, after it's over, I think the first person I actually went and talked to might have been the referee, which is now a good friend of mine and another promoter, Jason Freeman. But I went and asked him who was in charge, and he said the guy there in the white T-shirt, which was you, and you were tearing the ring down. And I went over and I introduced myself, and that was the first time you and I met. And man, Jeff, I can't do the math now, but man, how many years ago was that? I mean, and now look at us, we're like the best of friends. Now, and pretty much always have been since like the week after I started training.
Yeah, man, that's 29 years ago.
Yeah. I can only think of like maybe one other person that I'm still friends with, after a couple years, but 29 years, and we're still the closest friends, and we may not talk every day, but it's like, all of life's tragedies, all of life's ups, downs. I think you've came to every one of my weddings except for one, and the one that you didn't come to, nobody did. It was just close family. Or I say close family. It was just like a very small wedding. So, and I think I did invite you, but you couldn't go because it was so far away. Because we got married at the beach, and I think you were working that week. But anyway, back to the podcast in hand. But yeah, we've been friends a long time, and been tag team partners. And I know as the weeks go on and we talk more about my career, we'll touch base on that. But getting back to 1993 and how I got into wrestling, I know you got your record book of all the matches. Let's talk about like the when you first saw me doing training, like with that whole training camp that you had at the time. What were your thoughts?
I remember after the training session was over, I never did any training. I was busy, trying to, book the matches, get the matches lined up, and then, try to get music for all the wrestlers. And most of the time, I mean, there were wrestlers that brought their own music, but normally I had a big old suitcase of back tapes. There were CDs in 1993, or I'm not sure, but it was all, and of course, record or rewind music correct. There's no, it's song number 3 or it's song number 2, but
right.
I'm busy doing that, and then 3 of my guys are in there training, and these are guys that we started back in 1990 with, and they're training everybody. But I remember, I would kind of, keep an eye on what's going on in the ring while they're training, and I remember going up to them and say, "Okay, any of these guys ready to go?" And they were like, "Well, I don't know." And then I said, "Well, what about Tony?" And he was like, "Well, I think he's probably ready to go if you want to put him." And I said, if he's put in there with the right person, I think he would do really well. And so the next show we did, you wasn't able to attend, but the show after that is when you made your debut. But yeah, I was impressed because I remember even one of the trainers, James Harbison at the time, told me, he says, "Kid's got a nice punch."
Yeah. I remember, and at the time I was so keyed up, and I was like pinching myself every day because I was like, man, I'm really in here. I'm really wrestling. And as you were telling that, as you were talking about that, it reminded me, Jeff, that my first match actually was a battle royal, because that was the time where they're at the AMVETS Club, and my memory might be running ahead of itself, but I do remember at some point during the training process, each week we'd come and they would put us in you guys would put us, all those trainees, in a battle royal. And I remember getting in there and walking into the ring, and one of the guys, one of my high school friends that would come up there, and he went by the name of Bayou Billy, but he was totally clueless about the names of the moves in wrestling. And he said he was going to super slam Donnie, and I'll never forget that. And then Donnie came in and started beating the crap out of me, and I was like, I didn't say it, brother. It wasn't me. But yeah, so I remember that part. Like I said, that I don't believe that was my actual first match. I do remember my first, because I wanted it so bad that I would have done anything. I would have been a referee or whatever. But I remember I remember I'd come to you and go, am I going to wrestle this week? And you'd say, well, the guy said that, you're not quite ready for a match yet. And I said, okay, but I wanted to be part of the show so bad. So I'm in the dressing room, and I'm like, I'm going to do something. And James Harbison told Too Funky, the guy, his name was Too Funky. He's like, you need little Tony to be your manager, because he's got a heck of a punch. And he's like, okay, he can be my manager tonight. And I remember it was so funny, because as a kid growing up, I always thought that the best wrestling theme song, besides the Midnight Express's song, I always thought "Bad to the Bone" was the coolest wrestling song ever. And I always had this thought in my mind: if I was ever a wrestler, my theme song was going to be "Bad to the Bone." My gear, I was going to have white boots with black tights with these white lightning bolts coming down the side. I don't know where I got that from, but I think maybe the Fabulous Ones or something. But anyway, that was going to be that was going to be my look, and I was going to come out the Bad to the Bone. And I'll never forget, Jeff. I came over to you when I found out I was going to manage Too Funky, but I wanted to come out to my music. What was I thinking? But I remember going over to you and giving you my George Thorogood tape, Jeff. And I remember you looked at me and you said, Too Funky's coming out to this? And I said, yeah. And I remember it started playing, and we were at the door waiting to walk out. And he said, hey, what the F is this stuff? And I said, oh, that's our music. He goes, man, what's a black man doing coming out the Bad to the Bone? I think he wanted to come out to like NWA or something. But anyway, we came out there, and he, I believe he wrestled the the Invader number 2. And I was ready. I had gimmicks ready. So I had this briefcase, and I brought the briefcase out, and then I ended up getting, the Invader. I get up on the apron with the briefcase. The Invader hits me. I do this J.J. Dillon type bump on the rope down to the floor. And I remember I did that. Somebody was, I don't remember who, but somebody was probably in the back. But I remember somebody saying, dang, Tony, you took a J.J. Dillon bump. And I didn't even know I did that. It's just the way I felt, because I was halfway in the ring and halfway out. But they were like, you did a J.J. Dillon bump, man. You're gonna do okay. And there for a while, I wasn't sure if I was going to make it, because, that group of guys they were very hard to tell, whether they liked you, whether they didn't. Now you from the get go, I could tell, that you liked me, but the rest of the guys, I wasn't sure. It wasn't for a few months before I realized that, hey, I am in with these guys, and just because I came from another town and all these boys went to school together, or they're related, or they know each other, you guys let me in on the group, and I'm forever grateful for that. And even to this day, I'm still close to you and Donnie and James and some of a couple of the other ones. But man, 93 was like so crazy. Like, I wished I could go back and train a little harder and done differently, and not try to rush to get in the ring as fast as I did. But, it is what it is. It happened that way, and here we are, 29 years later, and I'm still wrestling. But getting back to this, as far as the notes you have, so I have I managed to Funky first, and then after that, I end up having my I think my first match was what, a 6-man tag team match, maybe?
Yes. It happened on October 31st, and again, it was at the AMVETS Club. It was a show called the Haunted Havoc 93. And it was, we did TV taping back then, and we put it on the local cable channel. And so it was TV show number 7. It was a 6-man tag. Dangerous Donnie, Tenacious Tony, and Japan Thunder Tiger against Terrific Tony, the Professor, and the Black Scorpion. And of course, you guys lost. I can't remember who was pinned.
That would have been me, and
okay.
And I remember in that match somebody getting mad because you got mad at your brother Tony because he hit me with like 2 big finishers and didn't pin me, and you were so mad at him. I remember you were yelling at him, going, "What are you trying to do? Run the boy off?" I remember hearing that conversation, but to me, I didn't care because I was like, "Hey, I just had a match," and I tell you another thing too, Jeff. At that time, I was still in high school, and I had brought we had that match. You taped it for me and put it on the VCR tape, and at the time, I'm in high school. I'm a senior, and I'm in this. I'm trying to remember the name of the group, but it was a little club there at school. It was like, because I was taking classes for business management, and so my teacher let me bring this tape in to share with the class, right? So we're watching this tape. Well, before he lets us watch the tape, he at the time we were talking about small businesses, and he's like, Tony is venturing out into a small business, and we're gonna watch his video today, and he lets us watch it, and I remember as your brother was beating the crap out of me, give me all these, he powerbombed me twice, I think it was, but anyway, whatever it was, I got like sympathy from all these hot chicks in my class. They would come over and they're hugging me, and I'm like, I think I can get used to this wrestling thing getting beat up. It ain't too bad. And so, but yeah, that was kind of cool. But I remember doing that 6-man, and I remember, them beating me. And then I remember, you making the decision to pair me up with, Japan Thunder Tiger, which his real name was Daryl Morris. And he was incidentally, Jeff, wasn't he a referee for Smoky Mountain Wrestling?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I think he was trained by Ivan Koloff and Bobby Fulton. So he's given me this training as well. He would come up and work, and like, as we're doing our training before the shows, he would work with me, and then you put me with him, and I learned a lot with him as well. And, but I, looking back over that, it's like, man, it's so funny how, with the way I started and now how I am, is like all the things I've gotten to do in wrestling, I never dreamed I would ever get to do. Back then, I just thought, well, this is as good as it's going to get. But as the weeks go on our podcast, we'll talk about more and more exciting things. But getting back to your notes, what else have you got for us?
Okay, and then the next show we did was November 14th. Again at the AMVETS Club, and TV show number 9. We had a battle royal, and I believe you were in the battle royal. That was the first match of the show, and then we taped another TV show number 10, and you wrestled against the Professor, and of course the Professor beat you. That was on November 14th, 93.
Yes, I remember that one too. Yeah, that was.
Yeah, you got any good Professor stories for the crowd?
Man,
PG.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a funny story. Around about, it's probably that same show. So the Professor, or James, he was very adamant about getting me, more involved and get me up there. But I remember, So at the AMVETS Club there in Morganton, they would have our wrestling would be there on Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, but on Saturday nights they had like a little honky tonk there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this one night, James says, "Hey Tony, instead of coming up Sunday, why don't you come up Saturday night and spend the night with me? We'll watch wrestling tapes all night and just hang out." I said, "Cool, let's do that." So I tell my parents, hey, I'm going up, whatever. And so off we go. We get there. I get up there, and he says, "Hey, let's why don't we just ride up to the AMVETS Club and see what's going on?" I said, "Okay, let's go." So we go up there. The place, all the doors are opened up. The parking lot is packed. He's like, "Tony, is this wrestling up here tonight?" I said, "I don't know. Let's go see." So we walk up. So instead of like coming through the front door, we just like walk through a side door. And then we end up running into another guy that was training or wrestling with you at the time. The Texas Ranger was his name. I don't remember his real name, but you may know who I'm talking about. But Texas Ranger was his gimmick name. So we run into him, and he's like, "Hey, dudes, what's up?" And so he's introducing us to these girls that was hanging out with him. So I'm like, man, this is all right. So as we're talking to these chicks, I guess the person that was in charge of running the honky tonk walks over to us, and he goes, "Hey, you guys didn't pay." And so James was like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm sorry." And then me, thinking out loud at the time, I said, "You mean to tell me you got to pay to get in this motherfucker?" Like that. And that man goes, "Yes, you got to pay." I said, "Shit, I'm from out of town. I didn't know that." And James you remember how James used to get tickled? So James is laughing, and he said, "Oh," and right as I said, "You got to pay to get in here," James says, "Oh, wah." You remember when you guys should always say that, wah? He says, "Oh, wah." And he starts cracking up. He's crying. And so we're walking to the door, and this guy is like pissed off. Like he's real, like you would have thought we stole beer or something. I mean, he was going off on me, cutting a promo on me and everything. And I just kept walking with my mullet, walked to the door, and he thought we was going to pay. We just kept on walking. And he told us that he was going to bar us from the AMVETS Club. And James says, "Well, Tony, I guess we're wearing hoods tomorrow." So I'm like, man. So that was like my first professor story. And then my next one was another time he had me come spend the night with him before a show. And we get up there, and I know I'm getting ahead of our podcast, but it was the night that we did the show at Drexel, and I worked. Let's see, James, or the professor, he worked a time limit draw with Mean Mark Ash, and I worked Magnificent Marshall. And but I guess at some point in this match, Mark Ash either stiffed James in the lip, bust his lip or something. But anyway, before the show, James tells me, "Tony, spend the night with me, and then after the show, me and you are going to go out to eat." And I'm like, "All right, cool." So we get up there, we do the show, we tear the ring down, we get in the car, and I get in the car with James, and we're driving over to what was that buffet place used to be there in Morganton, like off of exit 105? Was it like was it Golden Corral or Quincy's or something?
Gosh, back at the time, there's it was Shoney's at the time probably. Now it's called Abel's. I bet that was what it was. Maybe,
but it was a buffet, all you could eat, right? Yeah. And so I'm going up there, and I'm getting the steak, and I'm getting the chicken, and I'm getting the pinto beans. I mean, I'm gorging myself. And I look over, and oh yeah, and by the way, James bought he paid for my dinner that night too, right? So I'm over gorging myself, and I look over, and all he's eating is mashed potatoes. Like he had 2 plates of mashed potatoes. And I'm like, "James, man, why ain't you eating steak?" He looks at me, he says, "Tony, how am I supposed to eat steak when my lip is all puffed up?" Because he got punched in the mouth. So he was pissed off because I'm gorging myself with all this good food, and all he could eat is mashed potatoes because his lip is so swollen he can't, and it's busted, so he can't eat anything real salty. But yeah, that was pretty funny. But yeah, James was a character. I miss it. I miss him, and I love whenever you and you and again, we're getting ahead of the years, but we'll talk more about this as the weeks go by. But after I got trained up really well and kind of knew my way around the ring, you end up putting he and I together as a tag team, and that really took off. And then when he left and you came in and filled his spot, you and I become even better tag team partners than he and I were. So, and then at one time, you and him all three were like the Freebird type gimmick that we did. But yeah, that was fun. But he was so mad that Mark Ash busted his lip that he couldn't eat his mashed potatoes. And also, Jeff, on that same card, some fan, you may know the inside story on this one, I don't know, but some fan gave him a cucumber in a paper bag as he's walking to the ring.
Yeah. I won't share what I know about that one.
We'll leave that one alone. But it was funny because I remember looking out, I was like, what the hell's he got in his bag? And then we get to the dressing room and he throws it in the trash can. He's all pissed off and bent out of shape. And I'm like, okay, that's funny. But anyway, James was a character. We'll just leave it at that. James was a character. But anyway, back to 93. So we have the 6-man match, and then you actually put me in like a little feud there with Japan Thunder Tiger.
Yeah, that began on November 28th, again at the Invets Club. It was Stardust 93, and it was taping for BCW TV show number 12, and that was you guys were the first match, and that was Japan Thunder Tiger, who was the junior heavyweight champion, defeated you. He was defending his title. Yeah.
Now, he and I had several matches there in '93 for the junior championship, and then also even though he and I were doing the feud for the junior title, you end up teaming me up with the Texas Ranger taking on the BCW Tag Team Champions, John Sullivan and the Crucifer.
Yeah. And again, the week after that, on December 5th, again at the Invets Club, you again wrestled Japan Thunder Tiger, and he won. And then the last show we did in 1993 was on December 12th at the Invets Club. It was taping for TV show number 14. You and the Texas Ranger went against the BCW Tag Team Champions, John Sullivan and the Crucifer, and of course you guys lost. And I'm sure you want to tell the story of what happened in that match.
So at this point, and I'm not tooting my own horn, and I'm not bragging on myself, but even though I'd only been doing it just a short period of time, the fact of it that I was a student of wrestling, because for all those years prior I would watch, and I never realized I did this until one day I was on a show with Jimmy Valiant, and he told me that I sold just like Ricky Morton, and I didn't understand what, that he meant that. But then when he said that, it made me go back in time and think back to my childhood when me and my friends in the neighborhood, we'd all wrestle, and I would do like Ricky Morton. When I was a kid, man, Ricky Morton was my idol. Like he was my Elvis Presley. I had the same haircut. I would come to school wearing bandanas like him. I mean, I thought I was Ricky Morton. And as a matter of fact, I was thinking when I become a wrestler, I still had my mullet, I was going to call myself Tony Morton. And then I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be Terrific Tony. So that's what I did. But anyway, in that match, like when John would come in and he would hit me, I would sell. James would come in, or the Cruiser would come in, I would sell. I'd sell for them, whatever. And then John tells me to tag out, and I tag out and bring the Texas Ranger in, and that's when the whole match just went down the toilet. Because the Texas Ranger had no way, he didn't know how to sell. And I know, Jeff, you were on commentary, and John looks over at you. What was it he said? This son of a bitch can't sell.
Yeah, he said, some bitch needs to learn how to sell.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. And then after he pissed them off by not selling, he comes over and tags me in, and they beat the shit out of me. I mean, John Sullivan beat the crap out of me. And but then when the match was over, I go back to the dressing room, and I'm over there like, oh, this guy's gonna beat the shit, like worse. Like he beat me up in a working way, but when I get in the dressing room, it's gonna be worse. Like, I was thinking about, like, how quick could I just grab my bag and run out the back door like Lex Luger did. But but no, I walked on back, and when I got back to the dressing room, he's like, come here, kid. And I walk over, he goes, I am so sorry. And I said, and I'm playing off like, I was terrified. I was like, playing off like I didn't realize what he just did to me. And I'm like, sorry for what? He goes, yeah, I was a little stiff on you. He said, but you're a partner, couldn't sell his way out of a damn paper bag. And I said, he goes, why in the hell did they put you with him? I said, I don't know. And so he's like, well, just listen to me. When we're in the ring, just listen to me. I was like, okay. Then the next week, John comes up there and starts training with us, and he starts showing us all, how to lock up and how to do stuff. So the Texas Ranger kind of lit a fire under John to, kind of help us a little bit. But that was my first time of getting beat up. And probably the only time. I don't remember ever getting into I don't remember ever being on the downside of getting beat up in a match. I remember being the other person beating up somebody else for the same thing, not knowing how to sell. But I've done that a few times. But definitely that night, man, I was just like, man, John he just beat the crap out of me, and I didn't do anything. It wasn't even me that they didn't know how to sell. Oh, it was great.
Yeah. And then, of course, when we taped for the same show, we taped TV show 14 and TV show 15. And in 15, your first match against Japan Thunder Tiger, again for the junior title. And again, Japan Tiger went over.
Yep. Yeah, I remember he and I probably had probably right at 10 matches together before I finally, won the belt. And I remember, that was that like my last match of 93.
That was it.
That was it.
That was
okay.
Our last show. Yeah, it was December 12th. That was our last show in 93. We took time off for Christmas.
Right. That's what I was thinking. That's what I remembered. I remember, because I remember I was like, oh, I'm all excited about coming up. And then whenever you said, well, guys, we're taking off the next couple weeks for Christmas, I was like, dang it. I'm ready to come. I wanted to keep coming. And after that, man, it was like, I always like wrestling was always in my blood when I was a kid growing up. Cause I remember my in the 80s, like 84 to like 87, my next door neighbor would always come knock on the door and like, hey, can Tony come out and play? My mom was like, yeah, he can, but he's watching wrestling. And I was like, when wrestling goes off, I'll be out. So I kind of had like this. So on Saturday mornings where I lived, we got the WWF Superstars, I believe is what it was called. It would come on at 10 o'clock a.m. Then at 11 a.m., World Class Championship Wrestling would come on. It stayed on until 12. And then at 12 o'clock, Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling came on, and it was be on till 1. So from 10 o'clock a.m. till 1 o'clock, so from 10 to 1, I was glued to the TV. The only time I went and peed and got something to eat would be when the wrestling would go off. Like, I would sit there and wait because I didn't want to get up during the commercial break because I was afraid I might miss something and commercial would be over with before I got back. But that's how much I love wrestling. And then we would build like a little, we'd go around and find somebody in our neighborhood would throw away a mattress. Now, this day and time, he wouldn't do that because it's just nasty. But back then, when you're a kid, you don't think about it. And I remember walking through our neighborhoods and finding people that threw mattresses out, and we would grab the mattress and drag it back to my parents' house, put it in their backyard, put a rope around the fence area, and we'd beat it. And me and my cousins would beat the shit out of the neighborhood kids. And I can't remember how many times I got in trouble for pile driving the neighbor's daughter. And I didn't pile drive her in the fun way. I literally gave her the pile driver and dropped it on her head. But man, it was like I was addicted to wrestling. And then once I got to rep, well, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself. So I did that, and then probably around 88, 89, somewhere around there, I just kind of stopped watching wrestling. Like once Crockett Promotions was gone, I just stopped watching it. I got into music and started playing drums, and I thought I was going to be the next rock star. So I quit watching wrestling. Then I got bored with the music, sold my drums, and then I didn't do nothing but work and hang out with my girlfriend. And then once my uncle told me that he was wrestling and I met you, that was when I started getting back into wrestling. And matter of fact, now I did go see that one match in 91 in Greensboro, or 91 or 92. I don't remember what year it was now. I think it was 91 though. But whatever year Ron Simmons was the WCW World Champion, that was because that night he defended the belt against Vader in Greensboro. So I guess it must have been 92. But I saw that. Well, then I never watched wrestling, never turned wrestling on, nothing like that for a year later. And then once I met you guys and met James, the professor we were talking about earlier, he talked me into getting us tickets to go see Starrcade 93. And so we went to that, and I was like, wow, wrestling's changed, because it was a lot different than it was in the 80s when I went. So, but yeah, I mean, and then of course, Jeff, I remember in Starrcade 93, like the day, like I guess Starrcade that year, I believe Starrcade was like on a Monday. And so that Sunday before, I was up there with you guys training, and Bill Snow was teaching us how to do suplexes from the outside in. And somehow or another, he ended up suplexing me, but yet giving me a black eye in the process. And so James and I are at Starrcade, and of course at this time now I've been wrestling with you for a while, and now my head's starting to swell a little bit, starting to get a little cocky. And we're at Starrcade 93, and these girls are staring we're in line to go into the building, and these girls are staring at me. And I said, James, I said, check us out. He said, what? I said, those girls must know who I am. They're looking at me. He says, Tony, looking at you because you got a damn black eye, dude. I forgot I had a black eye. That thing was almost swelled shut. I could barely see the pay-per-view. But yeah, that was pretty funny. And then, of course, that night, after Starrcade, I decided James had to go to work the next morning, so he told me I couldn't stay at his house. Well, my uncle lived in Glen Alpine, so I dropped James off downtown Morganton, drive to my uncle's house in Glen Alpine, and as I'm driving there, I end up getting pulled over because I'm falling asleep at the wheel, and I get pulled over by a Glen Alpine police officer, and he comes up to the window, rolls the window down, and he says, you were weaving back there. And I said, yes, sir. I said, I'm getting sleepy. I'm trying to get to my uncle's house. I said, his house is like the fifth house on the right up here, so I'm really close. And he says, oh, well, where are you coming from? And now I'm thinking I'm going to get a ticket. I said, I'm coming from Charlotte. And he goes, well, what are you doing in Charlotte? And I said, I went and saw Starrcade 93. He says, oh, yeah? Did Flair win? And I said, yes. He said, oh, man, that's awesome. He said, where's your uncle live? I'm going to follow you to his house. And he let me go. So Ric Flair and Starrcade got me out of a ticket. So I thought that was a pretty funny story.
Yeah.
But man, I tell you, it's crazy when I look back and think back of how well, not just me, you and everybody else, but how we all thought back then. Like we had no wives, no kids. And of course, at that time, really, of all of us, the only one that was really responsible was you, because you had a full-time job, and you got to keep all these crazy dudes in line. You got to put together the matches. You got to pay for the rent on the building. You got to make sure the rings put like you had a huge responsibility compared to the rest of us. And but man, 29 years later, I'm still doing it. But even though I look back, I wish that I knew more then than I did. So, because I'm sure, the matches and everything would have been a whole lot more fun, but I know, everybody's got to start somewhere, and that was that. And thanks to you, that's how I got my start.
Yep. Yeah, and I agree, man. If I could go back, I've done a lot of things a lot different, but it is what it is, man. 93 was a lot of fun. As far as Burke County wrestling goes, we came from, 2 years of backyard, and from a backyard and a basement to we were on the road, man, doing actual wrestling shows.
Yeah, and
pretty neat deal.
In front of people. In front of people, paying fans. We had some good, man. I mean, we were doing really well, and some of the, at the first 93, we did pretty well. I mean, we did as far as fans coming to the matches and stuff. Mm-hmm.
Then it kind of tapered off in 94. Of course, just decisions I made kind of hurt us, but it is what it is.
Well, and the thing is, we make decisions, we learn from them, and that's kind of like me, as I touched on a little earlier. In 93, I was with my high school girlfriend. I mean, she and I started dating in 9th grade, and we dated from 9th grade to 12th grade. And I worked in a grocery store just like you did. I worked for Lowe's Foods. I was a stocker, head cashier. Now, the story I'm about to tell has never been told before. Well, it has been told. I've told you, I'm sure, and I've told a few of my friends. But as far as the Binge Buster listeners, they're, like I said, the month of March is going to be an in-depth. You want to get to know me, then definitely listen. Then definitely tune in the month of March. You don't really care, I wouldn't listen, because I'm going to be telling some stories that are going to blow your mind. They're going to blow my mind that I still remember them. But so and the Jeff, I was always destined to be a pro wrestler, and this is why. So my heroes in wrestling were guys like Ric Flair. And of course, I know I touched on Ricky Morton, and we know when in the 80s when Ricky Morton would come to the ring and the girls would go crazy and they rip his shirt off. And of course, you'd hear Ric Flair talk about women here, women there, women. Well, unless you know me very well, you'll know that in high school, middle school, high school, I was extremely shy. Even though I had a lot of friends and I was somewhat popular in school, but I was still very shy and timid. I would, sometimes get nervous, and I'm sure if you listen to the podcast, you probably hear me do it now. I'm doing it right now, but sometimes I'll get excited, or, I'm trying to say something faster than my brain's thinking, and I might stutter a little bit. So when I was in middle school and high school, I would get nervous and I would stutter. Because I was shy. When teacher would call on me to read in front of the class or do a school play, man, I would get nervous as crap, because I'm like, I'm going to stutter because I'm nervous. Well, so that was the kind of person I was back then. Well, then, Jeff, once I started working in the grocery store, I had this high school girlfriend that we started dating in 9th grade, but then, Jeff, I noticed something in 11th and probably 10th grade, in the 10th grade, first 11th grade. I started noticing something. And you know what I noticed?
What's that? She
wasn't the only woman in the world. There were other ones out there that needed to find out more about Terrific Tony. And at the time, I wasn't quite Terrific Tony yet. I was still Tony. So so I have this high school girlfriend, and then she had a friend that was somewhat interested in me, and I thought she was kind of cute. So that was my first downfall. And then when I got to working at the grocery store, I had my mullet, and of course when I was in high school, all the girls in home ec class, they always, in home ec class, you got to put the hair up. If you're cooking, you got to put your hair up in ponytail or whatever. So a lot of the girls be like, "Hey Tony, let me put your hair in a ponytail since we're cooking today." And they said, "Oh, your hair's so soft." And I was like, "Oh, that's a pretty good gimmick." I didn't know what a gimmick was then, but in my mind, I'm thinking, well, having long hair is a cool deal. So all those years, my parents thought I grew my hair long because I was trying to be rebellious, but I grew my hair long because the girls like to touch it in home ec class. So I just let it grow so they could touch it. And Jeff and listeners at home, I can't believe I'm telling this story, but I'm gonna tell. But I loved my hair so much, Jeff, that I would get up in the morning to go to school. I'd shower, wash my hair, and I would condition it. I'd blow dry it. It'd be all fluffy. I'd go to school, had a comb in my back pocket. I was constantly combing my hair. So I get to work. I start working at this grocery store, and one of the girls that I went to high school with, who was like a cheerleader and very popular, starts working at the grocery store. And we start talking, and she says, "When in school, I thought you were a dick." And I said, "Me?" She's like, "Yes." I said, "Why?" She's like, "'Cause you were always combing your hair." And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "You be going down the hall, you combing your hair. I see you in class, you combing your hair. You're always fluffing it with your fingers. And I used to get so pissed off at you. You know why?" I said, "Why?" She goes, "'Cause your hair looked better than mine." I was like, "Come on, you're a cheerleader. Your hair's great." She goes, "No, seriously." And all the girls be like, "I wish I had hair like Tony. His hair's always perfect because he's always combing it, And I was like, "Oh, I didn't even realize it. I just loved my hair, at the time. Of course, now I have none, so I loved it too much, maybe. But anyway, so now I'm working at the grocery store. Now I know I'm rambling on, but this gets back to the story of pro wrestlers. So as I'm working in the grocery store, I start realizing that a lot of the girls that work in the grocery store, they were kind of fond of me. But one thing, Jeff, I didn't learn that I learned pretty quick there is there's two things in life that I tell everybody, and it's a rule. And my boss man at the time at the grocery store, he gave me this advice. He says, "You never get your honey where you get your money, because one of the pots is going to go dry." And I was like, "Oh, okay," but I didn't really get what he was saying because I didn't realize that all the girls that worked in that grocery store were all crushing on me. And a couple of them, I was like, "Hey, I'll take, let's go to McDonald's after work. Let's go here. Let's go there." And I just wanted to take them to McDonald's and hang out, but they wanted more. But I didn't realize that at the time because I didn't realize that they were flirting with me because I was so naive and shy, right? But then once I learned, Jeff, that, hey, there's more to the grocery store business than bagging groceries, I started dating a couple different cashiers. I date this cashier, and now at the same time, I'm telling you, Jeff, I'm just like Ric Flair, and I didn't realize it. So I have a girlfriend that's a cashier. I have a girlfriend that I'm messing with that works in the deli, and I have another one in the bakery. All three at the same time at the same store. Tell me I was stupid. not realizing they talk, right? So and I got away with it for like, I don't know, a few months. I would realize, well, I was the head cashier, so my job was to train all the new people that came in. And that's kind of how the game started. And then one day this girl comes up to me and she says, "Tony," she's like, "Are you dating whatever her name was?" And I'm like, "No, not dating her." I said, "We just hang out after work." She's like, "Oh, well, she says that you're her boyfriend." I'm like, "No, not her boyfriend." And she's like, "And the girl in the deli says that that she dates you too. I was like, wait a minute, what? And that's when I realized that, you know, I'm gonna get caught, so I gotta end this somehow. And then that's when my manager come to me and he says, "Hey Tony, there's talk going around that you're very friendly with a couple of the girls that work here. Let me give you a word of advice: don't get your honey where you get your money, because one of them's gonna dry up." You know, so I had to break those off, but that was kind of like the first seed of like, hey, you know, maybe I won't be shy, you know. And so I started breaking through that shy barrier. And then once I met you and got into wrestling, Lord golly, it just took off after that. Actually, it didn't really take off. It just boomed, because I remember the first few times of walking to the ring, I wouldn't say nothing. I just walked to the ring and get in the ring and wrestle. And then you and your brother and a couple others would pull me to the side and go, "Listen, if you're going to be a heel when you walk out, you got to say mean things to the people." But I was such a nice guy, I couldn't. There was nothing mean I could say. It took a couple years before I learned how to do that. And then once I learned it, man, I loved it. And so, but it would blow people away, because they would say, "Man, Tony, you're such a nice guy. I don't know how you say all those mean things." It's just the way it worked out. But man, it was some great times in '93.
Yeah, and I'm the same way, man. Just when people hear I'm a wrestler, they can't believe I'm a bad guy. You ain't no bad guy. Mm-hmm. You ain't no bad. Ain't no way you're a bad guy. And then when they, you know, I say, well, you know, back then I'll let you borrow a tape. I let them watch a tape or a DVD, or now it's like, hey, go watch. You know, it's on YouTube. Watch this, and they'll go watch it, and they'll come back and they'll say, "I can't believe that's you. I can't believe that is you." I said, "Yep." I feel just funny. You go to the ring and you just automatically become a different person.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, that's one of the things that I always notice, and even not as much now, I guess, cause I'm older, and in my mind, Jeff, like I've got to wrestle like almost every one of my childhood heroes. I've either got to wrestle them or I've got to work with them. And I've gotten compliments from my childhood heroes. And so I guess in my mind, they're like, there's not much left to do. Like there's nothing like I feel like I've achieved everything. Well, not even everything. I've achieved more than I ever thought I would in the wrestling business, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so like now, like I don't like go above and beyond to do it. It's just like, okay, if I get booked, great. If I don't, yeah, that's great too. But like in the 90s, when I first started, like if you came to me and you said, "Tony, this is what we're going to do tonight. We're going to have a match. Excuse me. We're going to have a match. You're going to lose, and you got to wear a dress, or you got to wear a diaper, or you got to shave your head." I'd be like, "Okay, let's do it. Let's do it." Now it's like, no. And to give you a prime example, so in the 90s, you and I'd have a match, and I wouldn't think twice. Like, especially, and again, we're getting ahead of the weeks, but touch base a little bit. But like in the I guess 95ish, 96, we done our first show in Thomasville, and you and I worked each other. You were doing the little angle of the Ghost Rider, and I was come back as a baby face, and we're in my hometown. We're having a bull rope match, and man, I get the color, man. I got good color, and you were like, it was no big deal. You didn't care if my blood got on your shirt. You didn't care if my blood was on your arms or whatever. You didn't care. But now, and I didn't care. But now it's like, fast forward all these years. So this past weekend, Jeff, I got to tell you this great story. I shared it with you when we were out eating Saturday night, but now I'm going to share it with the people about how much we've changed. But I'm in this cage match, and like half the people in the cage is bleeding, and I go as far as away from the ring as I can, even though I can't go anywhere because there's a fence around the ring. I get over in the corner, and I have a guy punch me, and I drop down in the corner, Jeff, and I hid there for the rest of the match because I didn't want nobody's blood on me. Even though I love those guys, but it's just the fact of having somebody else's blood on me. I didn't want that. So I hid in the corner, and they'd come over, and I guess some of the guys would see me, and they'd come over there to me, and I'd say, leave me over here, I'm staying away from the blood. And they're like, wait a minute, you're in a cage match. What do you think? What do you expect? I'm like, yeah, I know. But it's just amazing. It's not amazing. It's just funny how things change. Now, if you're paying me $10,000 for this match, man, bleed all over me. I don't care. But if I'm not making $10,000, keep that blood on the other side of the ring. I don't want it. But it's just funny how things change, and your opinion changes as the years go by.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, any other thing you want to add to the show before we close this week?
No, I believe that pretty much covered 1993 and your start in the professional wrestling.
Yep, and so that was like the start of my dream. Next week we're going to be covering a couple of years, 94 and a little bit of 95. And Jeff, if you can just touch a little bit, give the listeners at home an idea of some of the things that they can expect to hear about next week. You won your first championship. We'll talk about it. Mm-hmm.
Burke County Wrestling changes over to New World Wrestling. We had an amazing summer. Let's see, we did one from June 25th to August 6th. We did 5 wrestling events, including wrestling event in your hometown, Thomasville, at the Armory. We did a couple wrestling events at the Drexel Community Center. And we ventured away a little bit from the AMVETS Club, just a little bit.
Yeah.
And the first ever wrestling, I don't think you were on that show, though. No, we did the first, I'm not going to mention that, first ever wrestling at the Burke County Fair. Yeah, you missed that one. But yeah, that's what we'll cover next week.
Now, Jeff, one of the things I do want to touch on right before we close tonight is during those years of Burke County New World Wrestling, whenever you were promoting, I was working for you. Of all those buildings that we ran, which building was your favorite?
I love the AMVETS Club. I know it was just the old rinky-dink country club, but it's just, I don't know. We were able to, you're talking about going to the honky tonk on Saturday night.
Yeah.
I would go there every Saturday night before, the next day we'd do a wrestling show, and just to get the key to where we could go in, and we could go up there anytime Sunday morning and go in there and set up the ring. We kept the ring stored under the stage where the bands performed every weekend. And I don't know, just the whole atmosphere of the place. I mean, we did most of our TV tapings there, but I that was just the place. And then, of course, man, finally, I was the first one to bring wrestling to the Burke County Fair. That was pretty cool too.
Yeah, I always loved the fair. Probably, I mean, I did like the AMVETS Club, but something about the Drexel Community Center, man, I really liked that building. I don't know why, but I did. I'm sorry, I'm saying Drexel, but I'm really meaning the Hildebrand Gym. I really like that gym.
Oh, the Hildebrand Gym.
The way it was, it was a great building.
Yeah, we did our first. We did our first show there in 1994. And, of course, the Drexel Community Center, we did a show there in 1993 in September, and something happened. You wasn't there at that show.
Oh, okay. But, I missed that one. But I was at the one I guess it was in '94 when you ran Drexel and drew a really good house that night. So, and of course, like I said, we'll talk. We'll definitely get more into that as the weeks go by. All right, guys. Well, Jeff, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to bring your book and share with the people, a little insight on the beginnings of my wrestling career. And of course, like I said, as the weeks go by, we're going to talk more and tell more stories, and I'll get I'll tell things that nobody's ever heard, and probably. You'll probably tell me something that's going to jog my memory and remind me of something I did, or we did together. Who knows, Jeff? But I'm definitely looking forward to this month. Hopefully next week, when we record, hopefully Chris will be available. We can get some of his insight too. But I'm excited for this podcast this month.
Yeah, so am I. Can't wait till next week.
It's going to be good. All right, fans. For Jeff Patton, I'm Tony Binge. We will see you next week here on the Binge Buster Show.
Thank you for listening to the Binge Buster Show. Make sure you like us on Facebook and download us on your favorite podcast platform.